Under the Scope. Hey, Scope fans.
Hi.
Jared and Shane here.
Welcome.
Another edition of the Scope Fall Film Flam. It feels more like a winter film flam. It is
chilly
cold
here
right now.
Chilly in Minnesota.
It is, almost Halloween, and Jared was cool enough to get yet more passes to another movie that all the nerds are talking about, or they will be talking about.
Maybe.
Of course, we're talking about Ender's Game.
Ender's Game.
Ender's Game starring Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford.
He's back in a
Ben
sci-fi
Kingsley.
movie. And some kid, I don't know his name. What's his name?
The title role of Ender Wiggin is played by Asa Butterfield. You may have seen him in the movie Hugo recently.
Oh, Hugo.
Or a couple
yes.
years back. That was what he is. I feel like this is... Yeah, it's good enough.
It's good?
I feel like it's on an angle. Whatever.
Hey, I like it. It serves Batman. 1960s Batman.
We got an angle.
So, Jared, this movie is based off of a very famous science fiction series done by Orson.
Orson Scott Card.
A controversial fellow in his own right. But let's not get into that.
He's got some opinions about a certain group of people that you can do your own research on.
Yep.
We're trying to divorce the review of the content from the person who wrote it.
Yes.
Because I read the books before I knew what sort of a despicable human being he is, so...
What is worse, Orson Scott Card or the Washington R words?
Orson Scott Card. Yeah.
That's going to be a new Scope game. What's worse for Jared? I'm going to come up with a list of things.
Let's not do that.
I think we've got our next show. 158.
Right. So, do you want to talk about the movie?
No, we're going to talk about things you hate. No, tell me about what the Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game is all about.
So, Ender's Game is Earth has recently beaten back an invasion force of aliens, sort of bug-like aliens. I believe they're called buggers in the book, not mentioned in the movie.
Yes.
But they're basically insect hive mind type aliens. We fast forward 50 years, and we are there. Earth has joined nationalities, and they're building up military might, and they've decided that children are going to be the next best commanders because they are able to work with dense information more easily or something. I forget exactly.
They were inspired by the great 80s Whitney Houston song.
What's that?
I believe the children are our future,
yes.
and the children are the future.
Right.
They're death machines.
They're able to... Basically, it's like kids are weaned on war games and video games and stuff like that. And so, it's sort of a logical extension of where we're headed. So
let's do it. Grand Theft Auto is just one step for us killing alien bug creatures bent on destroying the Earth.
For a novel that came out in the 80s originally, very kind of seeing the future pretty well. Yeah. But anyway, Ender is the third child of the Wiggin family, and he's not really they're not supposed to have him, but whatever.
Second child was Ralph Wiggin.
Wow.
Ain't Ralphie.
No. So anyway, there's three kids. There's the older brother who is way too violent, and then there's the older sister.
His name is Philip, right?
His Peter.
Damn.
Peter, and then his sister Valentine, who is way too empathetic. Ender seems to cut right down the middle, and
he's sort of like Baby Bear, if you will.
Yeah,
he's just right.
Just right. And Colonel Graff, Hiram Graff, played by Harrison Ford, he sees great potential in Ender, and so he's recruited for battle school. He launches into space, and thus begins a series of psychological experiments and training for Ender and also the cadets around him.
Yes.
To become the ultimate fighting force.
The ultimate fighting force.
That's what they're going for.
So a lot of the movie is essentially these tests.
Yes.
The majority of the movie are these tests, and then Ender moving up through the ranks.
One of the big ones is the battle room in the center, which is a zero-G sphere.
Zero-G Quidditch, essentially.
Sort of, but the goal is to either knock out your entire team or get one of your team through the opponent's gate.
Snitch in 3D.
Yeah. And if anything, that is the sort of importance of that is kind of glossed over in the film because there's a lot more battles and a lot more tactics in the books.
It seemed like they got a lot of lame freeze laser guns.
Well, what did you want them to have?
No. I'm saying in the movie, maybe they could have gotten them guns that could have shot a little faster.
Well, that's what's in the book.
Oh, I see.
It's all about learning to work within your limitations and work in three-dimensional space to become a efficient space commander, Shane. These are the things you learn at battle school.
Okay.
You're not willing to.
I think that connection is a little tenuous compared to what they had to do, but okay, I'll go with that.
Well, okay. So that's probably all the plot we really need to cover. Obviously, Ender, finds his way. He finds a series of compatriots who become his lieutenants, and eventually he goes on to greatness.
He has a great music montage where he's going through all his different training exercises and slow motion high-fiving and playing volleyball with the boys, too.
Right, exactly like Top Gun.
Top Gun?
So, we should probably talk about our impressions of the film, and I think this is going to be interesting because you've never read the books,
Never.
and I have read the books,
don't read.
and I think we have very, very different impressions of this film because of that.
My guess is with you reading the books, the things that were vague to me, you probably can fill in the blanks, which happens all the time. I mean, it happens with the Harry Potter films. It happened for me with Jurassic Park. I mean, a lot of movies that you read the book, and you're like, oh, this isn't there, but guess what? I know why. I know what wasn't there, and it makes it kind of cooler because I can kind of put these pieces together.
Okay.
As for the movie itself,
yes.
I mean, I thought that it was pretty interesting up until kind of the end where it went off the rails a little bit with me. Where a lot of the metaphysical, I don't even know if that's appropriate. A lot of the bigger picture stuff with him dealing with the aliens and sort of the battle sort of seemed a little.
And this is
I don't know, hard to follow for me. Like there was more there that I wasn't getting. That's how I felt.
And as
about
someone who's read the books, it made complete sense to me. But as I'm watching it, I'm also thinking, wow, how does one deal with this particular ending to this book, which is really meant to set up the trilogy that comes after?
It was a fairly abrupt ending, I think.
How do you deal with that in a film that is probably going to be self-contained and isn't going to spawn a trilogy of films afterwards? Because I don't know how you make the trilogy that comes after and make it a film that a mass market would enjoy.
Sure.
It's good, but it's very unique. So I don't know. I was sort of watching it as it happened going, I don't know how else you end this other than to do it as it is in the book, but that's the problem is the book sets up more books and it doesn't necessarily make sense or as satisfying to a person who doesn't know what comes after or isn't willing to go read the book. So you're sort of stuck in between a rock and a hard place there, Gavin Hood. Gavin Hood was the screenplay writer and director, by the way.
I mean, to me, the movie sort of followed the plot like, we have a boy who could be the real thing. Let's train him. We'll send him through all of the specific training exercises. We'll advance him up through it until he reaches his final challenge. Yep. Movie over.
Okay.
That's sort of how I felt.
And I think that's probably all you can really put in a 2-hour film.
Sure.
Unfortunately, there's a ton of stuff that happens in the books that just can't make it into the film.
Sure.
For me, I felt like the first two-thirds of the film was on fast forward. There was a lot of montage. There was just a lot of stuff to get to before we get off to the final third act. And
then I think when you get to the third act, it's actually a bit underplayed compared to the rest of it.
You think so?
In tone, to me, it felt a lot like the other acts. You didn't even, once you got into the third act, at least from a non-book reading kind of guy, I didn't really even feel like I was in it. And I was asking myself the question, how are they going to get to the third act? And then all of a sudden,
this is the third act.
This is the third act.
Okay.
And it didn't seem to have the weight.
Okay.
Maybe?
I completely understand that. I mean, I'm capable of filling in the blanks of what I'm not seeing and knowing the implications of what's happening. So, look, I'm a guy who read the books and never expected to see a movie get made.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this movie had been talked about and in development for decades, practically. Yeah. And to see it on the screen in any fashion thrills me.
You love it.
I mean, I won't love it. I'm not going to give this thing 4 stars, but just seeing some of this stuff on screen is amazing to me. Yeah. Because, like I said, I never expected this to happen.
Sure. So from that perspective, it's a home run. Doesn't matter.
It's not a home run, but it's definitely a success.
It's a ground rule double.
Yes. So, we want to talk scores? I think we're going to have to give this 2 separate scores. One for the audience who's never read the books and one for the audience that has. That's the only fair way to do it.
I think that's perfect.
Okay.
The scope score is 2 1/4 stars.
So that was our non-book reading score. Now let's give it a book reading score.
The scope score is 3 1/4 stars.
So let me ask you this, Jared. How is a conglomerate of an audience, both comprised of people that have seen the movie, have read the books and not read the books, how is this going to appeal to a mass market audience? How well is this movie going to do?
You know, my gut tells me it's not going to do very well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because I don't know. I mean, the book has been out for 30 years or so, and I'm sure there's a number, there's going to be a lot of people who read the books who are going to go see it, but they're definitely a minority. Sure. And I'm not sure how well this connects with a mass audience. I know they're really trying to, get the hype machine going, but I don't feel like there's a buzz.
Yeah, this movie is, we didn't talk about a lot of things. I mean, there is a quietness to this film. I mean, even in the action stuff, there's a stillness to it.
Sure.
There's almost like a sterilized, like a medicinal.
Sure, and a lot of that comes from the source material.
And I just don't know how the average person is going to deal with this. It's not a sci-fi movie that is an action movie first, even though there's a lot of action in it.
Sure.
It's quiet and thoughtful, I guess. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with psychology a lot of the time. So.
Which, unfortunately, to me, isn't always as front and center as maybe it could have been.
Sure. I mean, it's
so once again, you're bringing your prior experiences into it.
Well, and then just the format of a book, you get inner monologue, and you can so much much more easily explain motivation and the headspace of a character, and you just can't.
There just seems
hard to do that with a film.
At the end of the day, for a book reader versus a non-book reader, to me, being the non-book reader, there seems like there's more to the story than what the movie is allowed to give, and that hurts it at the end of the day.
It does, but maybe you go out and pick up the book, or you borrow it from a friend if you don't want to give OSC some money. I certainly have a copy I'm willing to loan people if they want to read it, but I might read it again first.
Do it.
So there.
Well, let's wrap this Fall Film Flam.
Let's do it.
Controversial episode. I mean, people are
different perspectives.
I know people are going to be talking about
backgrounds.
How dare you? So for Jared,
I like to cut down the middle. I'm like Ender Wiggin.
You're like
I'm neither not too violent, not too empathetic.
You're like the tape between Tony and Mona in Who's the Boss when they have to share the hotel room. You can't cross. You got to stay on each side.
Or I'm a child genius whose potential is yet to be realized.
Genius, I would never use that describing you.
Okay, fair enough.
Just a really smart guy who better drive me to my car after this is over.
Let's wrap this up.
So for Jared and everybody here at The Scope, thanks for watching.
Team of experts in the back
seat. Team of experts. Shane Crest out.
Ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves once again at the end. I hope you've enjoyed our time together. I know I have. Fear not, Scope faithful. Days shall pass as if they were but a moment, and Jared, Adam, and Shane will return with another thrilling episode. Until then, send your comments to comments@thescopeshow.com or leave a voicemail message by dialing
612-21-SCOPE. That's 612-217-2673.
Thanks for listening, faithful fans. This is Tony Partington saying arrivederci. Tune in next time to another terrific edition of The Scope.